calcium 7.3.
You once knew her as ER's Nurse Carol Hathaway.
What do you think shutting down her kidneys?
And The Good Wife's Alicia Florrick.
I need to atone for my personal failings with my wife, Alicia, and our 2 children.
Now the Emmy and Golden Globe-winning actress, Julianna Margulies, has become an author with her new memoir, Sunshine Girl. In her book, Julianna is candid about her unconventional childhood.
I read that your relationship with your mother was loving but also complicated.
She shares how listening to her inner voice allowed her to walk away from tens of millions of dollars.
I ran my finger down it, went like this, and the line was, I knew I wanted to learn more, not earn more.
Hi, Julianna Margulies.
Hi, Oprah. It's so good to see you.
It's so great to see you. What a pleasure to have you on Super So from my garden in Maui. Here we are, looking like little flowers ourselves out here, in our colors. So I heard you were in New York for most of 2020. What was lockdown like for you there?
We felt very fortunate because we have a house in upstate New York, and we packed our bags on March 13th and went up there for 2 weeks of quarantine and stayed there for 6 months.
Wow. So was it just the 3 of you?
It was just the 3 of us. Yeah, I did the shopping and the cooking and the cleaning and the laundry and finished the book. It was a lot.
I want to ask you a few questions. I've been asking other Super Soul guests about life during the pandemic. It's so interesting because for the first time in all of our lives, we had this shared experience, a collective, universal experience of being at home and figuring out how to be with each other in the home in a different way. Because I know for Stebbin and I, there have been years where I was on the road, he was on the road, you meet somewhere in the middle.
I felt because I had been working nonstop since my kid was a baby.
Yeah.
It was a little bit of heaven for me, just to always be home and being able to cook dinner every night. And I challenged myself in the kitchen and started getting very creative because I finally had the time. And that was a really special time for our family. I mean, my kid was like, I kind of like COVID. I mean, I know I shouldn't, but you're home all the time.
How old is he?
He just turned 13.
Oh. And so was this the most domestic you'd ever been?
Well, it was the most domestic constantly had to be, yes.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yes, constantly. I'm a pretty domestic person, and I do love to cook anyway, and I do love to keep home and make it a place that people want to come to. But there were some challenging moments where I would say, I have the most easygoing, I mean, you know Keith, he's such an easygoing guy, and he was working crazy hours. For some reason, he was always at his desk working, and one day I looked at him and I said, you have walked by the laundry basket for 3 months, and it's overflowing, and you never once think to do the laundry. Why am I doing the laundry all the time? But I think most women, I'm hearing the stories, that for some reason, most of the work fell on us, and I think it's just because we're multitaskers. I think it's just inherent, and I'm not saying anything bad. I'm sure there were a lot of men who did laundry too, but I felt like I was doing the brunt of the work. And Keith said, I don't mean it, I just don't look. I don't see it.
I just don't notice that.
He doesn't notice it. And he said, just tell me and I'll do the laundry. But it was almost easier for me to just do it. And that's my own problem, I know.
And that's what happens. That's what happens. You think it's easier to do it yourself, and that's why you always end up feeling overwhelmed. You speak for a lot of women. I want to know for you, were there any bad habits you broke, or were there bad habits you acquired during the pandemic?
Oh, that's a great question. The bad habit that I broke was rushing. I stopped rushing.
Good. Because there's nowhere to rush to.
Yeah, there was nowhere to
rush to the kitchen, rush to the laundry room.
But I would in the beginning. I was like, I have to do this, and this. I would set myself up with goals, you know, for the day. I have to record the thing. I have to do the thing. I have to write at least 20 pages today. I have to blah, blah. And then I went, you know what? It's a pandemic. Go easy on yourself. Stop. And Keith said, we don't have to have a home-cooked meal every night. Let's support local businesses. I'll go pick up a dinner one. So then, but we got into a rhythm.
Keith, he's so
I know, he's a good guy. I got lucky. And one of the things I think that I would go for long walks every day. Once I got Kieran in school in his bedroom, everything was done, I would go out for these 6-mile run walks and listen to S10E4. I had never heard her before. Do you know who she is?
Yes, of course, of course.
Yeah, and
I've talked to her, interviewed her, yeah.
Oh, I think she's magnificent. And then I would hear all these couples struggling, and I'd run home, and I would run up to Keith and go, I feel so lucky. Thank you for being in my life. It made me really cherish what we have when you hear the difficulty people are going through. And I'd be listening to all these podcasts through, you know, cow fields, because we're way up in the boondocks. And it was kind of a cathartic experience. And I would say all 3 of us started doing was meditating, even my kid.
Wow, that is so good.
Yeah.
That's a great habit to start. It sounds like Kieran, because you were saying earlier, he was saying, I kind of like this COVID, that you bonded in a way with as a family that you would not have without the pandemic.
Yeah, we really did. I mean, I
Yeah.
think he felt very held because one of us is always leaving. And games, I mean, don't judge me, but I taught him poker. And he's become quite a poker shark. But every night we'd sit, I have a poker set, and we'd sit and we'd play poker. We really played games and talked, and I think we weren't rushing.
What did you learn during the pandemic that you could live without? And what did you learn you could not live without?
I could live without all the fuss. I learned that a simple life is actually much more healthy. I loved feeling relaxed and not rushing. That I can live without. What I can't live without are my friends. I really do not want a life without the enrichment of my friendships.
What did you recognize in your life that, if anything, needed to change?
I think my capacity to worry. I had no control. We didn't know what this was, right? And I'm an A-type. I like to be in control of everything. And I had to let go. And I think that was the healthiest thing that could have happened to me. And I think my son and my husband would say the same thing.
Did you feel tested at all? Did you feel tested? And if so, what tested you the most?
There were moments where my patience was tested because I felt overwhelmed with responsibility. But I think I have that inherently in my nature anyway. And there were moments, I probably had a breakdown, I would say a handful of moments where I just lost it. And that's not in my nature.
What does lost it look like on you? What does it look like on you? How does lost it express itself?
Oh, I was ashamed. Honestly, I have to say, I don't remember exactly what it was, but I just screamed. I'm not a screamer, and I hate yellers. And I just was like, Kieran, I can't. You know, I'm doing everything, and I'm doing this at the time he was 12. I can't do everything, and you're asking me. And I stopped. I saw the look on his face, and I walked out of the room, which is what I normally do when I get upset. I walk out to take a breath and decide how I want to react in the moment, because I don't want to ever regret anything. So I want to think things through. And I walked back in, and I said, I am so sorry. You just saw your mom be a human being, and I need you to know that was wrong. I put it all on you, and I really apologize, and I hope you can accept my apology. And he was like, Mom, it wasn't that bad. I was like, no, that was bad. Like, that was not good. And you're a kid, and I'm the adult, and I need you to know. And that was it. He goes, can we forget it? And I was like, yeah, let's forget it.
But at least you apologize. I think that's good. I think that's good.
Yeah.
That you are modeling for him what to do when you feel like you've done something wrong.
Because we're all going to mess up. We're only human, you know?
Yes.
And so children need to see that part of it too. If they see it all perfect, they're going to have a hell of a waking up in the real world, you know, when they grow up. So they need to see us be imperfect.
That is exactly what you did by modeling that.
Yeah. I brought it home, and I said nothing. I walked into my bedroom, I shut the door, I opened the book, I closed my eyes, and I went like this. I truly, this is verbatim, went like this, and I opened my eyes, and the line was,
let's talk about your book. The title feels so happy. Sunshine Girl, An Unexpected Life.
Yeah.
Why was this the time to release this book into the world?
Well, actually, I was just doing the finishing touches of it during the pandemic and all the editing. And when you think a book is finished and then your editor says, let's move this around and move that around, and then you're like, ah!
Yeah.
I had been working on the book for 4 years because every time I would get a job and have to learn crazy dialogue, I would write, I can't meet that deadline. I have no time to write. So what I thought would take me a year took me 4 years.
You know, I think that a book is such a sacred thing when you release your story into the world and the story of your family and how you came to be. Why did you want to do that?
It's a great question.
At this time, yeah.
It didn't start out that way at all. This book has had many iterations, and it was originally called A Left Instead of a Right, which was, it was sort of going to be more of an idea that I had about how my career always took left turns instead of right turns, because it was something my grandfather always used to say, you never know, if you make a left instead of a right, you don't know how your day's gonna turn out. You might meet the man you're gonna marry. And I always felt that my career had done that. For example, ER. I got ER as a guest star on the pilot, and then I died. And that was the end of that. And then all of a sudden, my character lived, and that was such an incredible launching point for my career. So I always seemed to go in the back door. I didn't have the studio deal or we're gonna test you for this pilot. Oh, you got the pilot, now let's give you a deal. It just sort of seemed to go in a circuitous route. So that's how it started, and then as my...
But I'd read that the reason that George Clooney played a big part in that.
Yeah, and I write about that in the book. He did.
Yes.
I'd come back to New York, and I was living in a walk-up apartment building with some mice, and I needed a job. I was offered a job, and when I came home after the offer, and I was thinking about if I should do it, which I really, of course, was going to do it. Who was I? I had nothing. There was a message from George Clooney, and he's on my machine, and he said, I hear through the grapevine that they may keep you on as a series regular. Don't take another job. And I gambled on George Clooney, and I didn't take that job. He is responsible for my career.
Well, at least changing the trajectory.
Yes.
I believe in those trajectory moments, you know.
Yeah.
And after 6 years on ER, you decided to walk away, turning down another 2-year contract that was going to offer you reportedly, $27 million. That is the number, right?
That is the number.
And everywhere around you, you did the thing that people do when you know in your heart what you should do, but you go around and you ask everybody else, what do you think? And what do you think? And what do you think, right? And everybody says, girl, take that money.
Of course. Everyone said that.
And then I love how you describe this in the book. You go to the Bodhi Tree, of all places.
The Bodhi Tree bookstore, yeah.
Tell us that story. I believe in divine timing. I believe in divine intervention. I mean, I have never seen, I've heard lots of stories, but you can't get a clearer sign than that. So share that with us, will you?
Yeah, it was such an incredible moment. I felt very alone because I knew that I had already planned what I was going to do before they had offered me that money. I had my life planned. I was going back to New York and to go and do this play, and then all this money came up. So everyone I asked said, you'd be crazy, take the money, take the money. I went to the Bodhi bookstore. I had never been there. I don't know why I went. I had heard a friend had gotten some spiritual books, and I had been studying some Buddhism, so I went. And I ran my finger down a shelf, and I picked out a book that was called Awakening the Buddha Within by Surya Lam Das, and I brought it home, and I said nothing. I walked into my bedroom, I shut the door, I opened the book, I closed my eyes, and I went like I truly, this is verbatim, went like this, and I opened my eyes, and the line was, I knew I wanted to learn more, not earn more.
Whoa, I love that. I love when that happens.
I went like this. Oh my God. It was such an amazing moment in my life because no one else was in that room but me and that moment, you know? And I knew. I said, that's it. This is it. And I know there was a lot of naysayers and a lot of judgment and a lot of name calling, but I knew.
Well, you know, it's so unusual, and we'll talk about this later, but it's so unusual to get two incredible, iconic roles in a lifetime. And so when you turned that down, when you said, I'm walking away from ER, you were consciously aware that something like that might not show up again, correct?
Absolutely.
And willing to let that go.
Yeah, I mean, ER was a gift, you know, and that, it only happens, George and I always used to say, he would say, the stars only align like this once. When you have this kind of a cast, this kind of a writing, this kind of a phenomenon.
It was a phenomenon. It was a phenomenon,
It was.
I remember.
I mean, we were getting 44 million viewers every week for 6 years, pretty much, you know?
Yeah.
It was always the #1 show. And I was prepared to say goodbye to it because it had been such an enriching experience, and I was ready to move forward. You know, I was single, I was young, I was about to go do a play, I was already signed on to do the Mists of Avalon. Like, I had a year's worth of work lined up.
Yeah.
I felt so lucky to have had the experience. So, yeah, I was ready.
Takes a lot of strength and courage to make the decision when, you know, that much money is coming at you. That must have been exhausting as a child to always kind of be on that kind of high alert to be Miss Sunshine.
It's exhausting as an adult, too.
Let's talk about your unconventional childhood. You grew up in France, England, and the United States. How would you describe your mother and father? How would you describe how your family started and then split?
I would describe my parents both as deeply intellectual human beings that were always on a spiritual path. They were always looking to dig deeper into their spiritual life. And for that, I really feel that I'm incredibly fortunate, except unfortunately, within that environment, when you're really trying to find yourself, you often forget the people who are right in front of you. And that's sort of what happened. Their marriage disintegrated, I think, before I was even...
Yeah.
I think it was ending before I was even conceived. So they separated when I was a year old. And my father moved to Paris, and my mother followed him a year later because she wasn't going to stay in the suburbs of Spring Valley, New York, while my father was living in Paris. And
Paris, yeah.
And she was on this sort of quest to find her career. My mother was a ballerina, and after 3 children, didn't know what she wanted to do with her life, but she certainly wasn't going to just be a housewife.
I love what you write on page 7, that growing up for me was a life in chaos, sometimes beautiful, always filled with love, but much of the time insecure in structure and habitat. It's so interesting because to look at you, the roles you've played, the presence and carriage that you bring to all of your personal appearances, no one would assume any kind of insecure structure and habitat. How did you adapt to the chaos, first of all, and what was your particular coping mechanism?
So I think it's one of the main reasons why I need to be in control as an adult. So the book is titled The Sunshine Girl, based on a nickname my mother gave me the day I was born, because I didn't cry. She always says, you came into this world like just a ray of sunshine. You were just always smiling, and you were always happy. And I looked at my role, because of that name, as a way of making everyone happy. I will be the one that isn't difficult. I will be the one that makes people smile. That's my role. And so when the chaos and the uncomfortableness and the sometimes not appropriate living situations would happen, I had to, in myself, felt that I had to be okay with that. So if I could bring sunshine into a room, then everyone would be happy. Of course, that's also crippling, right? Because then I couldn't
Of course,
grieve.
because it's not real.
It's not real.
It's not real. It's not real.
And it can be burdensome. Yeah.
Well, I read, too, that your relationship with your mother was loving but also complicated. I mean, what struck me is that you'd gone to visit your father and you come back home and your mother is with a 21-year-old guy. That must have been...
That she moved into our house.
That she moved into your house.
Yeah.
And you're 15. Weren't you 15
I was
at the
15
time?
years old.
You're 15, he's 21, she's 46. Oh, my God. I went, whoa.
Yeah, that changed
How did you get through that?
we were very close, my mother and I, even though I knew a lot of my family disapproved of her, and my father was always feeling like, oh, what else is Francesca gonna do? Because she was a wild spirit. This, for me, severed our relationship.
Yeah.
Definitely in the beginning, because it was the first time my middle sister Rachel was gone. She was in college, so I was alone.
One of the reasons I think that story is so important, because lots of people have been put in that position where your parent finds someone else and now you feel completely usurped and unimportant. And your mother didn't do a lot to make you feel that you were the important one, because it was clear that the 21-year-old was now more important than you.
I think that's
Correct?
what hurt the most of all of it,
yes.
was the disrespect
Yeah.
for my existence
Yeah.
in that home
Yes.
with her. And she and I have talked about this a lot. She has wept many tears over this. I mean,
And
I feel
apologize, yes.
I feel so grateful that she's still alive and that we have been able to have these intense just mother-daughter therapy sessions, not with a therapist present, but she's done enough work on herself and I've done enough work on myself where I can say, you need to fess up, and she does. That's why I was able to
Yeah.
write the book,
Yeah.
because she gave me that permission.
You say, I don't remember a time in my life when I wasn't registering the temperature of other people's feelings. I made sure to do everything in my power to make things better for my mother, to sit on her lap longer after dinner or try to make her laugh. That must have been exhausting as a child, to always kind of be on that kind of high alert to be Miss Sunshine.
It's exhausting as an adult, too. Yeah, it's exhausting to feel that you are responsible for someone else's feelings, which as an adult now, I know I can't be, right?
Right.
But as a child, you don't know that. So if it's not working, then it's really devastating. If you're trying to make someone feel better and they're not feeling better when you're little, you don't understand what you did wrong. So yes, in that sense, it was very exhausting.
So when you're raised that way, with a lot of chaos going on, it affects the way you make choices in your own relationships. So were you trying to do the opposite of what you'd seen your parents do when you went to choosing your own personal relationships?
I so didn't want to be like my mother. I kept a journal from the age of 9 until I was probably 30. And I had them all. And that helped a lot.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
That's so good.
And I had all these journals that I found. And I would read this, child's writings, all the anxiety and fear I was going through. And I first of all, I think every child should get off that computer and have a journal by their bed, because it is, for later on, it helps you understand your journey in this life,
So you still have all of yours since you were 9?
Yeah.
I started around 15, and now I just do gratitude journals. But it's an incredible perspective to have your own words define what your life has been, isn't it?
It's amazing, and also you forget. So it's a beautiful reminder, and it's also chronologically, I was like, oh, right. It really helped me form this book, because I could feel, I read some of them and I just burst into tears. I was like, oh my God, why wasn't someone hugging that little girl?
Yes. You weep for the woman you were, the girl you were. I understand that.
I write a chapter, it's called Out for Justice, which is the name of the movie I did with Steven Seagal.
Yes.
And I write the experience of how it really happened for me in that hotel room with him.
During the 4 years you were writing this book, we saw the rise of the Me Too movement, and you shared your own frightening encounter in prior interviews and also here in Sunshine Girl. What happened? You want to share?
Yeah, so I write a chapter, it's called Out for Justice, which is the name of the movie I did with Steven Seagal.
Yes.
And I write the experience of how it really happened for me in that hotel room with him. He duped me into going into a hotel room without the casting director there, and how I was realized what a stupid move that was at 10 o'clock at night to show up in a man's hotel room at 22 years old. I didn't know. I didn't know any better. And the casting director had told me she would be there. So I come into his hotel room and I say, where's the casting director? And he says, oh, she had to go home, it was getting late. Go sit down on that, go sit right there. And he pointed to the specific cushion on a couch. I sat down and there was something very hard and uncomfortable under it, so I jumped back up and he said, oh, I must have left my gun. And he takes out a gun. I mean, if you wrote it in a movie, you wouldn't believe it. He takes out a gun. I'd never seen a gun. I was like, I thought only policemen and soldiers had guns. You know, I was so, and he's holding the gun up and I'm freaking out. At that point, I realized, oh my God, and he's huge.
I'm alone in this room.
He's 6'4". He's a martial arts. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I was told. And I'm alone in a room. There were no cell phones. There was no one knew where I was except the casting director, because she's the one who called me to go to do the scene with him that they wanted to work on. And I started to spin. Definitely my brain thought, how am I gonna get myself out of this? And then he said, I'm tired. He always talk like this in a whisper. I wanna go to the bedroom because I'm tired, I need to lie down, but we'll talk in there. And I thought, oh boy, okay, how are you gonna get out of this?
Get yourself out of this. Yeah.
I go, and he's got the gun. In my head, I just want him to put the gun down. And he did. He put the gun on the bedside table, and he sat down and he had me sit on the bed, and he said, I'm a healer. I'm a healer, and I can heal you. Let me see your palm. And he took my palm, and he looked at it for a long time, rubbing his fingers on my palm, and he said, you have weak kidneys. And the tough New Yorker in me, I was like, weak kidneys?
Tactic.
Like, what? And I started to see this stupid shtick happening, and then he looked at the other one, and he goes, I can heal you. I can help your weak kidneys. And I was like, I don't think I have weak kidneys. But it was so funny in retrospect that I sort of thought, this is so stupid, I can get out. And I just sort of jumped up from and I said, you know what, it's really late. I know it's my final audition tomorrow. I'm gonna get home and get some sleep so that I'm fresh for the audition. And I got out, unharmed, unscathed, except afraid. And then I had the audacity, and this is what being broke will do to a person. I got in the elevator and realized I had been promised money for a cab home because it was at Midtown Manhattan. I lived in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
It was midnight. I didn't want to take I had told the casting director that. I don't take subways at midnight. And she said, don't worry, we'll give you money for a cab. And I went back and I knocked on the door. Do you believe? I had, but I was broke, Oprah. And he opened the door, and I made sure to stand on the other side in the hallway, and I talked really loud. And I said, I was promised cab fare home. And he hands me, just laughs at me, looks at me the whole time, you know? Hands me the money. And I got in the elevator, and I looked, and it was a $100 bill. And I thought, if I just survived being in a hotel room with an action star and a gun, I can survive a subway ride home. So I paid off my credit card.
But what you write about that in Sunshine Girl is deep down I felt shame, even though ultimately nothing physically happened to me. I didn't want anyone thinking I got the part based on anything but my talent. Has telling the story helped release whatever that was?
Yeah, absolutely. I had never told that story really to anyone until the Me Too movement. Because, you know, once you start hearing other women talking about it, you realize, why did I sit on that? Why have I never told that story? And I guess for me, it was because nothing physical did happen to me, and I was smart enough to know never to be alone with him on set and always to make sure I was with the group of actors. But I really understood where those girls were coming from. And by the way, that happened to me, and I went and auditioned the next day and got the role and did it.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. You say that playing Alicia made you a better partner in real life. How so? The New York Times TV critic, the Margaret Lyons, called The Good Wife one of the best legal dramas of the modern era, she said. You won a Golden Globe, 2 Emmys, 2 SAG Awards for playing Alicia Florrick. 156 episodes. That's a remarkable run for any acting career. And you say that playing Alicia made you a better partner in real life. How so?
There's something about lawyers, and I'm married to he calls himself a recovering lawyer. They wait before they respond. I'm a very emotional person. I'm choleric. Something happens and I want to respond right away. Alicia taught me to stop and see both sides, the way lawyers do. And I brought that into my own personal life, and it really made me a calmer, better partner. Because instead of having a visceral reaction to something, I wait for a minute and go, wait, that happened, wait, but is my reaction right? It might not be right. Let me look at this for a second before I turn and blow something up into a drama, which is what I used to do. It taught me a different way to think. Yeah. I'm grateful for that.
So I love this. So being able to let that character go, which was such a part of the culture, I mean, that was also a phenomenon that you created. So I guess everything you do becomes a phenomenal thing.
It's the writing, though, really. It is the writing. I got lucky in timing, but it's the writing. If the writing's not there, the character's not there, right?
Yeah.
And the beauty of television, and I always tried to...
And also timing. Also timing, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Timing, don't you think? Because that first opening pilot scene that you talk about in Sunshine Girl, when she's walking down the hall with her husband and then goes to the basement, the paparazzi and all that, we had just come off of a lot of real circumstances. Yes.
I remember watching it. This is way before I had even knew about the script of The Good Wife. And I turned and said to Keith, she wants a hole to swallow her up.
I have never abused my office. I have never traded lighter sentences for financial or sexual favors.
And that's what they captured in the pilot of that show, which is what I think caught on to a global phenomenon.
Yes, because that woman standing by her man, but wanting to be swallowed up. And you did that. I mean, you embodied that.
Thank you. Yeah, I loved that character. I miss her.
Do you?
I miss Alicia, yeah, I do. I don't want to play her again, but I just miss, I used to love getting the written line. I just loved how incredibly smart she was.
Well, what's interesting, and you write this in Sunshine Girl, that when you have to embody a character like that the two of you kind of grow together, that she becomes a part of you, you're part of her, that kind of thing. So when you finally had to let her go and had filmed the final episode, you knew the final episode was coming. Is it a kind of like a grieving, a parting, a grieving in a way?
Absolutely. I mean, in perfect Julianna fashion, and you know, I look back because I got the chicken pox the night that we wrapped.
Yeah.
I broke out into...
When I read that, you know what I thought?
What?
This happened to me, not chicken pox, but at the end of every season of filming the Oprah show. I never missed a show in 25 years.
Right.
I went no matter what I was feeling. But at the end of every season, I would get so sick, it would be hard to get out of bed.
Right.
So, and also true for a lot of the producers too. Because I think, so when I read that, I thought, oh, that's what happens. Your body knows.
I was holding. And then when I could drop it, and in a weird way, I look back now, it wasn't fun going through it. But the chicken pox, right, they blister up, and they're very, very painful. Then they turn to scabs, and then they all go away. And it was almost like this, it took 3 weeks to fully get better, and it was almost like this shedding of my skin to shed Alicia from me. It was quite a moment. I was like, why chicken pox of all things? Like after every season, I would always get sick because that's what, like you say, you can't work that hard and not get sick. But chicken pox? And it sort of was almost like, you know, just all the skin fell off me. And it was like I was almost reborn. But it took a long time to get out of also the constant rush that I was in, learning 9 pages of dialogue every day, having to throw that dialogue out of my head so I could learn it for the next day, making sure I was the mom and the wife and the friend and the daughter. It was so much of this, running without checking myself, that letting go of Alicia was truly one of the most calming experiences of my life because I wasn't on a clock. So it was quite a moment and a mourning period because I loved her and I loved the people I worked with.
And I heard you were offered a guest star on The Good Fight, a spinoff of the original, obviously. You turned down the role because the network refused to pay you your rate that you received for The Good Wife. I say, standing up for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I really looked at that moment and I thought, yeah, why not? Sure. But then when they didn't want to pay me my rate, which I thought was fair, I was like, okay, you're going to pay me what you paid me on The Good Wife. I just thought, if I can't say no to that, then the girl coming up behind me is going to get the same treatment.
Right. I think that's great, Julianna. You did it not even for yourself as much as for the people coming up behind you. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't need the money. I did it on principle and fact, you know? Like, this is my worth, you got to pay it.
When you first met Keith, you thought that he was an actor and you just wanted to stay clear. But now you've been married 14 years. What is it that makes the marriage work?
I got really lucky.
He got lucky too?
Yeah, we have such mutual respect for one another. Mm-hmm. And we both are incredibly, first of all, we're not in the same business, which I think is really a good thing. He gets excited by my work, and I get excited by his work. I've never learned more from another human being than I have from my husband. I know it sounds so corny, and I waited, I waited. I was 39 when I met Keith, and I was ready to have an adult relationship at that age and not bring all my baggage to it. So I could really see him for who he was, and here's what made it work. I never pretended to be anything I wasn't. I used to pretend all the time in relationships, like, oh, he'll like me better if I do this or if I do that. There was this great moment, and it had been in the book once, but it got cut out. But the greatest moment for me in my relationship with Keith, and I think there's a lot of women who will relate to this, was we had a late night out when we were first dating. We were like 3 months in, and we were walking to the kitchen to make coffee, and we were both a little bleary-eyed, I'm not gonna lie. And I saw a ball of fluff on the carpet on the hallway runner in front of me, and I bent down to go get it, and he said, seriously? You're gonna pick that up now? And I remember my hand hovering over that ball of fluff and thinking, don't pick it up, he's gonna think you're a crazy cleaning freak or blah, blah, blah. And I went and I picked it up and I turned around and I went, yeah, this is who I am. I like a clean house. I pick up fluff if I see fluff, whether I have a headache or I'm tired. It's who I am. And he started laughing so hard. He was like, that's awesome. My apartment's down the street if you want some more fluff to pick up. He just thought it was funny. Originally it had been in the book, but I had to edit it out.
Yeah, he's not gonna notice the fluff. He didn't see the laundry for 3 months.
Exactly.
For goodness sakes.
But
okay.
that was a turning moment for me. And I know it sounds like such a small little thing, but for me it was huge because I was letting him know, this is it. Love it all or don't love me.
Well, you just answered why it works, because the both of you can be your full self. You're turning 55 this year?
Yes, I am. Yeah, in June.
I remember when I turned 50, Maya Angelou said to me, baby, the 50s are everything you've been meaning to be. Do you feel that now in the center of this decade?
I love it. Yeah, I have to tell you, I wouldn't want to be any other age. I really wouldn't. I certainly wouldn't want to be younger. There is such power in getting older. I mean, there's things that really are awful, like my perfect eyesight's going. And there's certain things that aren't great about it.
You're lucky if you still have that. I mean,
yeah,
I was 42, sitting at Bergdorf's having lunch, and I noticed I cannot read the menu. What is going on here? So that happened to me early.
42? No, 42. Yeah. I was like,
doing that thing. Yeah.
But the power comes in knowing who you are, right?
Well, listen, you certainly must have learned a lot about yourself, just making everything so perfect in this book. You did a really good job compiling all of the stories from your past, integrating them with who you are now. So what is the thing the writing taught you most about you? What's the big revelation? I know it's cathartic when you do something like this. So what was it for you?
I've got a full disclosure here. I tried to give my advance back on this book 3 times. I felt like such a failure. One, because I'm such an avid reader and I love writers so much. My father was a writer. I have such respect for them. And I kept thinking, who do you think you are that you can write a book, Missy? Like, really? This is gonna be awful?
Miss Sunshine.
Yeah, Miss Sunshine.
Yeah.
See, I know I can act. I don't know if I can write. So I'm uncomfortable now. And now you have to sit in it. So sit in it. It's okay. What's the worst that can happen? You fail? At least you tried. What would you say to Kieran? Try. If you fail, we'll still love you. So it was such an amazing process for me. And by the way, I had to give myself this pep talk pretty much every morning. I loved the process of writing.
Well, thank you for writing it and letting us know that even the Sunshine Girl doesn't have to be the Sunshine Girl all the time.
Right.
But the most important thing is to be yourself.
Yeah.
And that's how we all get to have an unexpected life. So thank you so much.
Thank
It's
you,
available
Oprah.
May 4th. Available May 4th, Sunshine Girl. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's so good to see you.
Good to see you. Give my best to Keith.
I will, of course I will. Take care.